Hello. So I wanted to do sort of a review on corsets and specifically this corset, which I made and I have worn a lot. And I just kind of wanted to share my experience with that because wearing a corset that is something you've worn for the first time, it's brand new, that experience is very different from a worn corset that you have broken in and have worn a lot. And it's even different, like you can find videos that are like, I wore a corset for a week. Those are even very different. When you have worn a corset and it is shaped to your body and it's been broken in, it is very different. And so here's some of the stuff I have learned from wearing a corset a lot. Now, I'm not going to make it sound like wearing a corset is all rainbows and butterflies and is a perfect experience. It's not. There are inconveniences, but honestly, modern undergarments have drawbacks as well. And so I'll go ahead and talk about some of those things. And before we get going, just kind of as a disclaimer, I guess, corset is an undergarment. And so if you are someone who is uncomfortable talking about undergarments, both past and modern, you've been forewarned now. So it might get weird for you if you're uncomfortable with that, but now you know. Another thing to let you know up front, I don't want to mislead you. I have not worn this every day, but I made this 4 years ago now. Why I like to wear it is because it saves my back. I have a part-time job, I'm a face painter, and leaning over for hours and hours at a time face painting little kids really was taking a toll on my back. It really took me like days to recover, the aching just getting relieved. But when I wear a corset, no back pain whatsoever. I'm just fine the next day, and so this saves my back. So that is primarily what I wear it for, is when I go face paint, just to save my back from getting in pain. But I also wear it for a lot of other things if I want to, and like I wore it when I wore that thing. I wore this underneath. And so there are other various reasons why I put it on. That's the main one, but yeah, anyway. So I didn't wear it every single day, but over 4 years now, I've worn it dozens and dozens of times. Just so you know a little bit about this corset, like I said, I made it. It's not perfect because I made it. Like, I think the waist might be a little bit higher than it should be, but it was made to fit me. And so it is very comfortable. And so that is one reason it works so well, is it was made to fit my shape. It is 2 layers of coutil, I never know how to pronounce it. And so it is a little bit thick, but not bad. It's still plenty flexible and comfy, but it is a little bit more rigid than if it was made of something a little bit more thin. So the boning, these front 2, 4, 6, 8 curvy ones are spiral steel boning. These front 2, I believe, are spring steel. The back ones are steel, but all the rest of them are plastic. They're the synthetic whalebone. And so that helps keep it a little bit lighter, having that little bit of plastic in there, but then the rest of it is either spring steel or spiral steel. A huge characteristic I tried to give this corset specifically is I wanted it to be as stealth as possible, meaning that I wanted to wear it under my clothes and I did not want it to be obvious or visible. So that is why it is this color. I didn't want any, bright colors that would show through, more sheer fabric. And I tried to make the top kind of the shape of a bra, modern undergarments, so that if it did show through, it wouldn't be really obvious if it was like flat top or something like that. You will notice it is also closed front. A lot of corsets have a busk in the front and it clasps closed in the front, but I thought the little clasps on the front might be visible through a shirt, and so I didn't do that. It probably would have been fine, but that's why it is a closed front, which is a great segue into how I put this on. It does need to slide over my head, but I have made the lacing in the back big enough, long enough to where I can do that very easily. If my hair is up and it's catching on my hair, then I'll just turn it around and slip it down on front, and then I'll just turn it around on myself. Once I have it over my head, all I have to do is tighten the lacing, which doesn't take that long at all, just a minute or two. Now, a good corset should have like at least a 2-inch gap or something like that. I didn't make this one quite right. The gap is a little bit too small. On my next one, I'll make it a little bigger. And I used to tie it in the back, but then I discovered that you would have these long dangly bits that were really obnoxious to try to deal with. And so I finally figured out that you can wrap them around and tie them in front. And honestly, this is so much better to be able to tie it around in front. I was scared that it was going to be bulky under my shirt, but it's not. And so that's how I like to tie it. Takes up more of it, and so it doesn't hang down so far. This is a great way to close it up. Big question, is it comfortable? Is it a torture device, right? Like the world, especially Hollywood, would have you believe. No, it is not. It is plenty comfortable. It's just different. Like modern undergarments are very restrictive and uncomfortable in their own unique ways. And so is this. It's not perfect. There are things that are uncomfortable about it, but I'm not being tortured. I am not uncomfortable. I'm just fine. And in a lot of ways, it's actually more comfortable than modern undergarments. Now let's go ahead and break all that down. Breathing. Can I breathe? Of course I can. I've made this corset spacious enough where it's not, tight on my ribs or restricting at all, and I don't lace it super tight. It's simply there to give me structure and support and a silhouette if that's what I'm going for. It's not restricting my breathing at all. And even if I was lacing it tight and it is restrictive a little bit, you just breathe differently. Like instead of breathing out, you just breathe up. It's actually very similar to when you're pregnant. If you've been pregnant before, when things are getting squished a lot down there, you simply breathe upward instead of out. You just, instead of a deep breath going sideways. So you can still totally breathe just fine. It's just different. Mobility. Does it hinder my movements or being able to function during the day at all? Nope. It's just different. Like if I want to bend over to get something, instead of bending over with my back, you just bend with your knees or with your hips to get something. You just need to adapt to the different ways of moving. One of the most surprising benefits, so I'm a mom, I have small kids, and something I was not expecting is how handy this came in with kids, because I was scared it would get in the way and hinder me from being able to do all the things you have to do when you're a mom. But one of the best things is the hip. When I had like a baby and like when you have a toddler and everything, setting it on my hip or the car seat or the laundry basket, whatever, is it creates a shelf, a nice sturdy shelf for it to sit on instead of it being my squishy flesh. And so it took all the pressure, all the weight. Holding my kids and everything was so much easier with a corset on. And there are just little things like that you don't really think about as being a benefit until you wear it for a while and actually start experiencing life with it, that you start seeing and having these benefits that you wouldn't think of otherwise. And that was just one of the biggest ones, is being able to put groceries or whatever, just sit it on my hip. It took all the stress off of my back and everywhere else, and just use this as a tool to hold everything. It was great. Another big question that gets asked a lot, am I hot? Do I overheat in this? And the answer is no, not really. It's just different. And there's one summer, this is so fascinating to me. I wore it like every other day for like 3 weeks. I walked my son to school and back right when the school year started, so it was still like 90 degrees outside. On the days when I wore a sports bra, I would get so right under the bust where like the elastic is that holds it on you, right there would get so hot and sweaty and so gross. And so that is where all the heat was when I was wearing a sports bra, and like the whole upper part of my torso would just get so warm. You would think that this would be hotter because it's 2 layers of a tightly woven fabric and it covers my whole torso, but it wasn't. It was just different. The top part up here where I had been feeling so much heat from all the elastic and everything, I'm free to ventilate. All the heat can just escape up the top here, and so it didn't build up or anything. My upper part here was so much cooler. And something very interesting is right under here where I would get so hot with the sports bra, there's actually a gap because this is, kind of stiff and rigid. It goes from here to my, widest point, and there's a gap in there where air can circulate and it cools you down so much. And so that was something that was very fascinating to me. The air could circulate in that gap right there and cool me down. Where I felt the heat was right here on my ribs. That's where I felt the heat. And so this wasn't a completely perfect experience. That's where I felt the heat. And part of me suspects that might be, like I said, I think I've put the waistline a little bit too high, and so there might be more constricting there than there should be. That might be it. I don't know. Maybe it is just that it's a corset. But that's where the heat was down lower instead of up here. This is where the heat was. And then the lower half of me, where it's all being covered here, I didn't really feel anything. I have nothing to report. Down here, just felt normal. So again, not better, not worse, just different. And here's something really cool that you wouldn't really think about and wouldn't really know unless you have been wearing this regularly and had all these experiences, is how the undergarment reacts to all this. Because you should never wear a corset unless you have something underneath. And the garment that I wear underneath, it's kind of like a shirt, some cap sleeves on it, and the way that it absorbs the moisture and how it cools down and like distributes the coolness throughout it underneath the corset is fascinating and like scientifically genius. All of the sweat keeps you cool and protects the outer garment. I only had a couple times where the sweat would come through on those really hot days. It came through about right here is where the sweat would accumulate, and it did come through on my corset a couple of times, but it was so few and far between. The undergarment really played a big part, and it was so interesting to me how that helped affect the coolness over my torso. My next corset that I plan to make, I do plan to make it a little bit thinner and a little bit more breathable, so we'll see how that one is. So that is kind of the bulk of my review. Now I want to go over some things that I would do different with this corset and some things I would change. Like, I made this side too high. These bones, like, they don't look like they are too high, but anytime the corset comes up or my arm goes down, those do kind of stick into my armpit and are a little uncomfy. And so on my next one, those are gonna go down just a little bit, and this whole thing will probably drop a little bit so that that goes away. Clearly it's not unmanageable because I've been wearing this, and so it's still totally wearable, but that's something I would like to change on my next one. There's something when I made this corset, I'm still trying to learn how to fix this. There's kind of this bubbling effect where the two pieces of fabric up against each other, I don't know, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm still trying to learn why that is. I don't like how that looks at all. It's still a functional corset, but that is something I do not like about this one, and I want to learn how to fix. One of the biggest issues with wearing a corset, for me, I still have not found a solution around this, is wearing them with modern day pants. There's a reason I'm wearing leggings in this video, because they interact with each other in such an awful way. They bump into each other and fight each other, and I still have no good solution around. Like, these pants are high-rise pants, and they still bump into each other when I bend over and stuff. It is very frustrating and annoying. I want the pants to go over the corset, but I have found it does work better when I put them underneath the corset. I don't like that as much. That it kind of mostly works, but I still have not found a good solution to get around that problem of those two bumping into each other. And I don't want to lower the corset at all to make it longer, because then it is going to start bumping into my tailbone and my pelvis, and I don't want that to happen. So if you know a way to get around that, please let me know. Last thing I'll mention is something I've already brought up, and that is that the gap in the back should be bigger. When I made it, I did remember that something needed to be taken out, and so I took out like an inch on both sides, thinking then they would touch, not knowing that when it is tightened, there should, after that, be like at least a 2-inch gap. So I should have taken out like 4 inches. I just didn't really know that or think about that, and so that's something I'll fix in the future, that gap needs to be bigger. One last little thing I did forget to mention is the top part here, the binding on the top, it likes to fold over and under right there, which is obnoxious, because I think it's because I made this too pointy, and so it folds under. Luckily, it doesn't make it bulky enough to show through my shirt or anything, but that's too bad. And so the next one I make, that's another reason that I think I'll try to make it a little bit more even on top so that doesn't happen. So there's my review of what it's like to wear a corset pretty regularly for 4 years now. It's been an awesome experience, and I really wish that more people knew what a positive experience it is, and that it's not just a torture device that's uncomfortable all the time. Like I said, there are drawbacks, it's not perfect, but it's not uncomfortable. And I do kind of want to give just a very small lesson right here for anyone who's unfamiliar with this, that there is a difference between being corseted and being tight-laced. And I think this is where a lot of the confusion comes in. This is a really big topic and discussion, but it can basically be boiled down to those two things. Being corseted is basically what I've been showing you here, like this. Being tight-laced is having a structured garment that is intended to give you waist reduction and be very tight on you. That can very often be uncomfortable, depending on the person and the situation, and it shouldn't be done consistently. It is something to give you a specific look for a short period of time, and it is a choice. It is meant to give you a different shape and intended to pull it tightly around you to give you waist reduction. That is what it means to be tight-laced, and that is different than just being normally corseted. One of my favorite comparisons to this is shoes, wearing shoes. There are all sorts of different types of shoes. You have your stiletto high heels. that are not very comfy. And then you have your sneakers that are very comfortable to wear. That is a very good comparison for these different types of ways to be corseted. A stiletto, you are not going to wear very often. You are willing to wear it for a short period of time, like if you're going out for the evening and you want to look really good, then you would be willing to go through that discomfort to accomplish a certain look. Whereas just being normally corseted is much more like just wearing a sneaker. But both of these, with all types of shoes, of course you need to break them in, and they are much more comfortable when they are broken in. And it's the same with corsets. And I think this is one reason a lot of Hollywood actresses hate corsets so much. Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, but one is they don't wear it for a long time. They just wear it for a little bit, and I doubt they have the opportunity to get it broken in. So it's going to be all stiff and rigid, and it's never going to get comfy. And so just like with shoes, you want to break in your corset. And so that's one of my favorite examples is shoes, is you've got your stilettos and you got your sneakers, just like you have your normal corsets and then you have your tight-laced corsets. So I just wanted to put that out there to clarify, so hopefully if you didn't know that, maybe you learned a little something and can help spread the word that being corseted is not torture and awful and evil. It's okay to wear a corset, and I will continue to do so. It is so handy. It helps my back so much, gives me that support and helps me from not being in pain. And so I'm going to keep wearing a corset, for the foreseeable future. I don't see a reason why I would stop. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video and listening to my insight, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.